What's going on, family? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Crossroads, the English segment of the Puerto Rican podcast La Mogolla. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts if you only listen to podcasts. And today, I have a special guest. His name is Mitch Strong, brother of Jonathan Strong. I've had him on the podcast already. You know, you've been to Lebanon, helping Syrian refugees down there. And I asked him, is he a human rights advocate or is he a humanitarian, right? And we were talking about this offline, right? Off the air. And I like how you said humanitarian and not a human rights advocate, right? Because a lot of organizations tend to hide behind the human rights thing, right? And they do a lot of dirty and dark things. Let's talk about it. What's going on? How are you?
I'm great, man. And then, like you said, we were talking earlier before we just started this podcast and recording it. And we talked for a while. And it's great to be part of this because I've heard great things about you from Jonathan. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get my story out. Excited for people to hear. I'm excited for them to want to join me on some of my travels and not be scared about what's going on.
Let's get it. Let's get it. So tell us a little bit about your background and then we go into your work because it's really interesting what we talked about.
Yeah. So I'm from the Bronx, New York, Co-op City. I'm definitely repping that hard. I came out to college, University of Nebraska, a while ago in 1992. And it was a culture shock for me, being from the Bronx. I wanted to get away. This is actually the start of my travels outside of the country that I wanted to get away. I wanted to go somewhere that was as far from New York as possible. Now, you could go out to California because that's further away from the Bronx, from New York. But culturally, Nebraska was the place to be. Now, I did get fooled here because I'm not sure if a lot of people know exactly the weather here and how bad the weather gets in the Midwest. I mean, we are actually in Tornado Alley. We're in Hail Alley and Tornado Alley. We're the only state that's in both of those places. So we got ridiculous weather here. But when I came out, so I ran track initially when I came out here, I was on my recruiting trip to come out here and visit the school. And my mother knew some big alumni here. So I said to myself, I might have to think about Nebraska, but let me go out there, check it out. And I remember barely leaving New York because there was a huge snowstorm because it's New York, right?
Yeah.
And so a flight got delayed. I come out here. Now, this is 92. So this is internet, I couldn't check the weather, stuff like that. I knew where Nebraska was geographically, but really wasn't sure about the climate. But I get out here and it's like 70 degrees. And this was in late February. And so I'm thinking that this is the climate all the time. Get out there, 70 degrees, the women are wearing nothing, playing volleyball on campus. I'm like, I have to go to this school. It was unbelievable. I go back to New York. I tell everybody about Nebraska and how many girls are outside and the weather, all that stuff. And so now I came out to school early because I was running track. So I got out like maybe a week before classes start. Now, Lincoln, Nebraska is a place where it's the capital of Nebraska, but it's a college town. So I don't know anything about college town. I'm from New York City. There's people out all the time.
Yeah.
When school is not in session, nobody's around. Nobody's in the city almost. So when I get off that plane, first of all, I meet a guy from Queens in the airport in St. Louis on the layover. And I was telling him all this stuff about school, about Nebraska, about the weather, about the people, all that. So he's never been out here before. So we take a van from the airport to campus, right? And what I saw on my recruiting trip was completely different than what I saw being out in school a week early. First of all, it was windy that day. Nebraska win because it got some tornadoes. And there was nobody on campus. And it's the first time I've ever seen tumbleweed pass through right in front of us. A huge thing of tumbleweed. I'm like, what's
just like the cartoons?
Just like the cartoons. And I was like, this is bad. This is not what I was expecting. This is not what I saw before. And then my time got a little bit worse my freshman year. And I think I talked to you about, well, I didn't talk to you, but you saw I wrote something down about being in a place that is completely different than New York. I thought was going to be a positive thing. But I realized a few things. I realized that I probably should have went somewhere else. This is what I realized at first, because it was different. All right. I knew that there was like a lot of racism in the South, things like that. And I'm not saying Nebraska is it's not like the South. I'm gonna say that. But I did encounter things my freshman year here that opened my eyes up to the way things are in this country. And I think that's one of the reasons why I did choose to leave the country, explore, go around the world, because I realized that in New York, I come from Co-op City, and Co-op City is a place where there's so many different people, but it's very diverse. In New York City is diverse, segregated in a sense, but it's still diverse as a whole. New York,
very much so. Yep.
And Nebraska has a decent Black population, but they tend to live in Omaha. But Lincoln is completely different. So I came here to Lincoln, and I'm like, wow, this opened my eyes, and the fact that I was hit so hard with something that made me realize that I'm a minority in the United States. And it was tough to go through.
And before we get into that, because that obviously molded your life moving forward, right?
Yes.
I'm interested in knowing if you ever experienced a tornado, because a lot of people ask me about hurricanes over here, right? Nevada, they don't know anything about hurricanes. So I explained to them, right? I'm the type of dude that I could go through a hurricane. It's fine. I just have to prepare myself.
You have time. You have time.
That's it. But what happens with tornadoes, though, right? I've never experienced one. I don't know if you have, living over there in Nebraska.
So here in Omaha, we don't get as many tornadoes as you get in other parts of Nebraska, where I went to school in Lincoln. It's a flat. I think it has something to do with the way Omaha is positioned on the Missouri River, and it's kind of hilly. That's a lot of people don't realize. Lincoln is very, very flat. And then if you go west of Lincoln, it's extremely flat. And I remember there's two things. After my freshman year, I was doing an internship, and we traveled the state. And we were out in Grand Island, Nebraska, doing some work. And as we were driving back, and I'm in a car with a bunch of people that are not from Nebraska. So it freaked me out even more, because they were freaking me out. Like the tornado, so we're in a tornado warning, and we're on the highway. And what we did was we every car stopped, and they kind of got into a little ditch and all that stuff. And off in the distance, I saw my first tornado. Wow. And it's scary because it's very unpredictable. You don't know. It's not the hurricane where there's which way it's going, heading northeast, this and that. But the tornado is unpredictable. So you don't know where it's going. You don't know when it's going to stop. You don't know when it's going to continue. You just have to prepare yourself and pray. And that's
what category was it? Was it a big one?
To me, the smallest one is a big one, because if I see it, I don't even know. I think that what the category is based on a lot of the damage that it's done. I've learned that. So looking at it, you can't tell if it's a category 2 or 3. Afterwards, they'll tell you based on a lot of things that I don't know, because I'm not a weather person. I'm not a tornado chaser. I try to run away from tornadoes. But a lot of that category wise, it's a lot of the damage that happens from the tornado. So I'm gonna tell you one more story about a tornado, because it happened a long time ago. after I first moved in. And this is actually when I was leaving Nebraska. And it actually happened after I left. So I lived on a farm, and that was a cool thing, because being from New York City, being from Co-op City, tall buildings, like actually being out where there's nothing and seeing the stars, that's amazing. Love
beautiful.
That.
Yeah.
So I lived on a farmhouse, and I was like, this is the perfect. It's nice. It's perfect when there's nobody around. And I had a roommate, and the farm was her parents, and her parents lived about a couple of miles away. So they got her this house on this farm. She had a couple of rooms, so I loved it. And but I left, and she was there, by herself. And what happened was, there was a tornado, and this was a category. Talk about categories. I think there was a category 4 or 5.
They call it F4, F5s, right?
Yeah, it's F4, F5. Yeah. She ended up, it was like spotted near, and this is how unpredictable these things are. It was spotted near the farm. So what she did was she left that house because it was probably going to hit that house. And she went to her mother's house, her parents' house, excuse me, a few miles away. Well, the tornado bypassed the house on the farm and actually hit her parents' house while she was in it. She was, I guess, in a hospital for a month. She had a wall fall on her. I talked about her brother's car being somewhere else. So that could have been me if I would have stayed. I think it happened maybe 6-7 months after I left Nebraska the first time.
Wow. So you escaped
another
tornado. So
yeah,
you escaped 2.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Third time is a charm, huh?
You get used to it, though. In Lincoln, like, you got used to it. You hear the sirens, the tornado sirens. You know where to go in the buildings, because usually the houses or the buildings, they have those storm shelters, because it does happen frequently.
That's good. That's good. They had to adapt.
Yes, they did.
Their environment. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. So that's your background going to Nebraska. You went to school for what?
I didn't know. I went to school to run track. That's why I'm like still going to school right now. I decided I wanted to do something different from what I did before. Political science.
Political science.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I still like dabble in that political science. I told you what they're trying to do, draft me to become one of these Nebraska state senators, things like that. But I realized that my focus is more on helping everybody, trying to get politics out of what I'm doing as much as possible. But that's why I went there initially.
And helping people, did it start after going to school in Nebraska, or do you have a background of that as well?
No, I don't. I guess being from Co-op City, and learning to live in a community, I guess growing up, I was always helping people. I played sports, of course, helped my team. But it was, I think, being in that community is because I always say that we've lost a sense of community in this country, in this world to an extent, but especially in this country. And so Co-op City, living amongst all different types of people, it gave me that sense of community. So I was always in my mind helping people. And I think, besides, my family, my mother, father, I think that it's Co-op City is so important to the way I am now.
Okay, that's amazing. And tell me about your story reaching the Lebanon, or are there things beforehand that we should know on how you ended up over there? Because it's a far place. It's far away.
It's a far place. So I will tell you, one of the things that molded me was something that happened in my freshman year in college. It's a quick story, but it's long in a sense that it's tough. It's hard. And I still kind of when I see problems across this country, I always go back to what I experienced. I said, yep, you know what? I know this happens because I was there. When I first it was the first few weeks of being in classes, there was a girl that disappeared. Her name was Candace Harms. All right. She disappeared. But I'm from New York City, and I grew up in New York when New York was bad. A lot of people would disappear and die and all that stuff. So I don't really think anything of it, but it was big news in a place like Nebraska.
Yeah.
College girl disappears. So I just lived my life. And I had a few friends that ran track on the team. One was from Bahamas, uh, Ohio, and California. And we were on a Sunday night. We were out there, running, racing people. We were playing practical jokes on people in the dorms. And I remember that, you had a lot of guys from either football team or just regular people want to race the track guys. I'll race you, So we were doing all this crazy stuff. And I don't know if we pulled a fire alarm, but we're just doing stupid stuff that we were 18 years old, 18, 17 years old. And that was on a Sunday night. Well, on Tuesday, Rudy, he's actually was from the Bahamas. He's in class with me in an anthropology class we had. And on Tuesday, we're getting ready to go to practice. And an officer, police officer, comes to my room, my dorm room with Rudy. All right. And wants to talk about something. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I know it's exactly what we did on Sunday. We're in trouble. All right.
Please don't tell me they pinned the disappearance on you guys.
So what happened was,
oh my God.
So what happened was she started verifying information that she already had, parents' names, social security number, all this info she had. So I'm like, I still figured that it was because of what we did a couple of days before. And then she said, do you know who Candace Harms is? And I'm like, oh my God, this is not about what happened before. Damn. And we were like, yeah, that's the girl that disappeared. And she said that somebody saw her talking to a black gentleman in the class the day she disappeared. So, because there was 4 of us, 5 of us, excuse me, there was 5 of us. Those officers, they questioned the 5 black people in that class. Now, this is a girl that class was at the end of the day. She was probably talking to a bunch of other females, a bunch of other people that whole day. But because she was talking to a black gentleman, and I don't even know, because I like to talk, it could have been me. But because she was talking to a black gentleman in that class, we were questioned.
Okay.
And so we were questioned for a while. And we all look different too. So there's no reason why we all needed to be questioned. We look completely different. Well, a few days later, because one of the guys who was an older, non-traditional student, used to play football, they went to his house and he said, no, you are not going. Oh, sorry. I skipped something. They took our pictures, mugshots in the dorm room.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know to say, you can't do that because I'm 18 years old. I just turned
you're young.
18.
You're young.
And so they took our pictures, and that was scary because I'm like, this is not good. And Rudy, he's 17 and he didn't even know anybody from the Bahamas. He didn't realize how this stuff worked. All right. And I said, Rudy, this is not good. So the gentleman, Phil Bates, was the non-traditional student. And he was like, no. Either way, a couple of days later, it got out into the news that it made it seem like there were like new leads in the disappearance of Candace Harms. And then eventually our names got out.
Damn.
And like I said, this was before the internet. If this was today, people would be going crazy. Back then they were going crazy. They would have like these protests and marches for us. They call us like the Candace Harms 5.
Really?
Yeah.
So people were already blaming you guys without having evidence.
We had threats. But what we did was there was a gentleman, Ernie Chambers, who was the state senator at the time, who was actually, I think, one of the first black state senators like in the country or something like that. He was the one that started the petition against South Africa, the boycott, divest, and sanctions against South Africa, which got vetoed in our state legislature. But he's the one that actually started that. He's the one that helped us through this process. He talked to the media for us. You know, they had to talk to him because of what's going on.
Yeah.
And my life was hell for maybe like a couple of months until they caught the real killers. Because
also she got killed then.
She got killed, brutally killed.
Man.
And it was, in fact, it was two guys. She was leaving her boyfriend's house, because here's the thing, is that after she was in class, she went to her boyfriend's house and she stayed there for a while. So I don't even know why they kind of questioned us, but they said that the boyfriend didn't do it. But after she was left her boyfriend's house is when she got abducted. And it was two guys. One of them ended up getting the death penalty for it, but he died in prison of cancer or something like that before. But I'm thinking that could have been me. That could have been us.
Easily.
And there was like one person that while this was going on, before they caught the killers, I remember this girl. And it was Lori from South Dakota. All right. She studied with me, and she was in that class, that anthropology class. She studied with me, and she went out to a movie with me. And I'm like, aren't you like scared? Aren't you nervous? Because everybody else was. Like, I couldn't meet with my TAs because they didn't want to meet with me, because they thought maybe I could have killed this person, or maybe like killed, or could have whatever. They were scared. I don't have no idea, but they didn't even want to meet with me. You know, people were scared of me, but this girl, Lori, she wasn't scared. She went to a movie. I'm like, aren't you scared? She's like, no, I don't believe you did it. I'm like, all right. Well, I didn't do it, but I'm like,
exactly.
So it made me think about like the struggles that people have here. And it also made me think, like, Lori, like there's humanity in the world. Like, she didn't believe that. You know, this was a girl, she was white from South Dakota, and going to a movie with me while this was going on. I'm like, that's amazing to me. And so that's when it's like, you know what? I want to escape the world. I want to get out of here. I want to go places. I want to see what else is out there in the world, but knowing that there's people like Lori out there.
Did you ever doubt about Lori, if she was sent to like maybe befriend you and ask you questions?
Not until now.
Hey,
not until now. I was places, 18.
Bro. Yeah, my mind goes places.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man.
I gotta get out of this country again. Gotta book a flight. No.
Yo, but listen, that experience right there of you getting accused. Not accused, but at least
I was accused in certain eyes.
Yeah, in certain eyes. That's the problem, right? Even though the police department did not have evidence that it was you guys, people just wanted to decide. You know what the thing is? People get into a hurry. They really want the killer to be caught.
That's
so if there's a lead, and even though there's no evidence that lead might have done it, right? They want to go ahead and just make it true, right? And lynch the person. It's crazy, man. You're lucky, bro. You're lucky that you were able to live in that area and go out actually and not get harmed by anybody.
Yeah, we had threats against us. And so, I've seen the dirty side of things. And so, you know, to be honest with you, you know, people talk about like white privilege, things like that. And for me, it's real. You know, nobody can say, oh, there's no such thing. And I understand this was in the 90s. So maybe things have changed, but I don't think so. But there's that white privilege in the sense that those cops did not question all the other people that she talked to that day, other than her boyfriend. You know, they didn't talk to the girls, the white females, that students that she talked to, that she interacted with. But because she interacted with four Black Americans and one Spanish guy, who was I think it's Puerto Rican. Because she interacted with these 5 Black gentlemen, is that one of them must be guilty. And so that's that white privilege that people don't talk about. Say that's that doesn't
tough,
exist.
Man. Being so young and going through this, what type of threats you were getting?
You know, a lot of it was like, you know, first of all, why aren't they talking if they didn't have anything to do with it? You know, that was not death threats, but threats of like, it will find you, will do this to you, because you killed this person. Or again, they didn't even know she was dead or alive at the time, but they just assumed that she was dead. I probably assumed that she was dead as well.
Yeah.
But, it's those like, we're going to do this, this, and this, to you. And it was
And
scary.
How long did it take for them to find the true?
I'm pretty sure it was about 2 months,
Wow.
a month to 2 months. So, like I said, for weeks, I lived like I was nervous. I was scared. Didn't want to be around it, and that's where practice like was helpful, like going to track practice, getting that stuff out of my mind. That helped a lot in being in the atmosphere with all those athletes that, they couldn't care less what was going on. They had to win games, they had to win the football games or baseball games. So they didn't really like focus on much of anything else. And that actually helped me.
That's crazy because it doesn't only show what, African Americans go through in these situations or people of color, but it also shows what females go through, right? This girl was kidnapped and killed for no apparent reason, right? And Jesus. It's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah, no, and I don't blame. And here's the thing, too, is like I stood up for quite a few people in the administration there because I understand the situation, and this is how I feel about like people in the world and doing certain things. Like I understand where they're coming from. I understand this girl's parents. They don't know what's going on, and then they see these guys that they feel that they're hiding behind something, or they could be. Please just talk to the police, talk to the detectives, whatever. And they see that we're not doing that. So as a parent, and I have a daughter, I would hate to have, to be in that position. So I understand their frustration. But again, I'm innocent in all this stuff. So, understand my point of view. It's scary. And
it's scary. It's scary. So this marked you to a point where you're like, you know what? I'm going to help everybody in need that I can, obviously, right? You're only
it marked me to a point where I'm going to help everybody in need. And also that I want to see what's out there, what's outside of our borders, because of that reason, because of what I went through and how I was molded. And like I said, remember, I told you I want to go places as far away from New York culturally as possible. But I'm scared to go to the South, and because of what happened to me my freshman year. So I tell people I've been deep into Iraq, and I rather go deep into Iraq than deep into Alabama. Okay. But it's not off the table. But I'm more worried about going deep into Alabama than deep into Iraq.
I get it. It's your experience, and nobody can take that away from you because you already went through something real, right? That and your life was in danger.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what people think. What matters is what happened and the consequences of that, right?
Right.
And what's the first country you visit outside the US? Specifically for humanitarian work.
Oh, for humanitarian work. I've been to a lot of countries. So I would probably say like Lebanon. The first time. So I did a lot of humanitarian work here in the States. I worked with a lot of refugees in the past, especially in New York, and worked for, various organizations to help refugees. And so that's one of the reasons why, I said, you know what, I want to actually change everything, get out of like political science and specifically focus on like international relations. All right. Because, I think all this comes from also, growing up in New York and being around so many different cultures and having two friends that were from Lebanon, when I was in junior high school. And I've always because they were from Lebanon, and then the stories that I've heard from people from all types of places and war torn. I mean, Lebanon was going through a civil war when I met Danny and Carolina. And then I hate to say this, but like Chuck Norris films and all that stuff, with Delta Force and going to these countries, I said to myself, you know what? I want to go to Lebanon. That's like my bucket list. And I don't like to say bucket list because that seems like places that you'll never get to. So I like to say like my places that I will go to. And I ended up studying Arabic at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. So now I'm switching into international relations. So I studied Arabic at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And I knew as an adult trying to learn a language that I'm going to have to put myself in that Arabic speaking country environment to really pick it up, and which I did. So of course, in my first class, I got an A in Arabic, which I'm surprised that I did. But I was picking that up easy as an adult, but I still needed to be in the environment. So I remember talking to my professor who was from Iraq, and I said to her, I was like, listen, I'm thinking about going overseas to study Arabic. And I was thinking about Jordan at the time. And I remember telling her, like, if I go into Jordan, like if I study Arabic in Jordan, can I go to Iraq? Just step foot in Iraq for a day. And she was like, oh, no. I said, is it safe? That's what I said. Is it safe? And
what year is this, Mitch?
It's 2017.
Okay.
So ISIS is around at this time.
Yeah.
So I asked her, I was like, so first I didn't say I was going to go to Iraq. I said, hey, is it safe? Is Iraq safe to go to? And then she was like, well, yeah. But then she was like, well, who? For me or you? And I said, for me. She's like, oh, no, don't go. She said, I'll be a catch there, a good catch for people. And so I told her what I was thinking about doing. And so I ended up the next year, I ended up going to Lebanon instead of Jordan. But even after Lebanon, I went to Iraq. And I remember texting her from Iraq, showing her a street sign of like Baghdad and all that stuff. And I said, guess where I am? I'm in the place that you said. So it was really nice. But the first place that I did humanitarian work was Lebanon. I guess that's why I fell in love with the place. Wow. And it was only to study Arabic. You know, I went to school there, and I picked Lebanon, and I picked the scariest place in Lebanon because I'm not scared. I'm not scared to be around that. I guess being from the Bronx and having a level of street smart, and growing up at a time when New York was really bad, I wasn't scared to be in that. You know, everybody else, my parents, my family, my mother was scared, but I was not nervous. I was like, I can't wait.
So you would say that street smarts is universal. It's something that you could apply anywhere you go.
I think so. I think that depends on your level of street smart.
Yeah.
I like I said, New York at the time was tough, and I was in the Bronx and taking the subway, you know, when I'm like 11 years old, 12 years old by myself. It's at a time when New York was so bad. I think that that gave me that level of street smart that I can take everywhere.
And which school did you go to in the Lebanon?
It was the Levantine Institute in Tripoli, Lebanon, Trablos. It was Tripoli is the second largest city in Lebanon, but it's also the poorest. That's actually the poorest city on the Mediterranean basin. So all those countries, Northern Africa, Southern Europe, Middle East, it's the poorest city in that area along the Mediterranean. And because of it being the poorest city, there's going to be some problems there. And it was known as Jihadi City because it had a level of extremism. And there was a lot of spillover from the Syrian civil war that was going on 20 miles away, because Syria was only 20 miles away from this city.
I was reading on that. You're talking about the civil war that started in 2011.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Between the Syrian government and different extreme, groups.
That's another story that we can get into, because I know we like to talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about something that wasn't black and white. That war was not black and white. There was a lot of different components going on, which made it like really crazy. So, like the United States involving itself in there, it was bad because there was so many problems. But that was only 20 miles away.
And that was spilling over Lebanon.
And that was spilling over into that. That was spilling over onto the eastern border of Lebanon and Syria, and also the northern part where I was. It was spilling over. So like a couple of years before, like that city was in all-out war. parts of that city was in war. But I said to myself, that's where I'm going to learn Arabic. That's where I want to go. And so I did it. And that's when I really started doing that humanitarian work over there, working with Syrian refugees, that instead of working with them in the United States, working with them in the country that they go to as soon as they get out of harm's way. You know, I was working with kids that, you know, that saw unspeakable things a week before, 2 weeks before.
Damn. And were you doing this in an individual level, or were you teaming up with organizations that were there already?
At the time I was doing it, I was teaming up with people because the school also worked with an organization. So this is when people are going to the institute, they also talk about some of the things that you can do to help a lot of the Syrian refugees there. So I was doing that on my own. But here's the one thing about like being in an environment like that is that I didn't live in the dorms. They had some dorms where the school was. It was in the city, so it wasn't like a campus, like city buildings. But I lived about 40-minute walk from the school, and I lived in an apartment. And what I did was a little bit different from some of the other students in the school that were from America and Europe, is that I hung out with the local people. Okay. I did not do anything with any of the students. I did stuff with the local people. And I met one guy's name was Rami. Rami, I met him because I love to eat. And I asked this gentleman who was just standing in the street on a sidewalk outside his building, which I didn't know was building. I was like, where's good places to eat? And then he started talking to me. And next thing you know, he takes me out to lunch. And then he introduces me to everybody in the area. And I just loved it because I loved the people. And they were so nice. And they welcomed me like I've never been welcomed in a place before.
That's so interesting because I hear this from other folks that have traveled to, you know, countries that are poor or their life conditions is not the best. There tend to be a lot of, you tend to see a lot of solidarity, right, between people.
Yes.
You said this off the air as well. I'm really curious on how your day-to-day was. Describe to me a day-to-day in Lebanon. You woke up, it's hot, you know, you're talking to people, and, you know, how is it?
So I would wake up, and I had an apartment that was right across the street from the Mediterranean Sea. So I would eat, and we had a balcony.
That's a view.
Balcony. I'll send you some pictures. It's an unbelievable view. And so I would eat breakfast there. And then I would usually, depends on if I was late, I would take a taxi to the school. Now, taxis are different. You don't really call a taxi. You just go out and people are blowing their horns. That means that they're ready to pick you up, and you just wave. And then you go to, I went to the school, and I would go to school from, I don't know what time, but after school, I would actually walk back. I would walk back every day.
40 minutes.
40 minutes. And I would meet people along the way.
You're listening to the streets.
I'm listening to the streets, seeing everything, checking everything out. People are coming up. I'm different. And I was like, I'm a bodybuilder. So I was a big dude at the time, huge. And so people are like, what the heck is that walking down the street? Yeah. But instead of like being scared, they would take pictures with me. They would want to give me food for free. I didn't pay for anything because people were so nice, and they would give me, because one of the guys that I would hang out with, he said, tell people in America that we're not bad, because that's what we see a lot of. We get scared of Lebanon. You know, we're told something different. We're told to those places are scary, and the people don't like Americans. The people don't like, says the people love Americans. They love Americans. You know, they just don't like the government, the policies of America. All right. But they also said, but they don't like the policies of the government in their country. So
these are smart people, right?
Yes,
I've seen signs on, you know, on TV when I was young on how they would say, America, we don't hate you. We don't like your government. right?
I saw that. I saw that.
And
I
you saw
lived
that,
that.
huh?
I lived that. They are the most welcoming people I've ever been around.
Wow.
And so I got, and I have to tell this story because it's a crazy story, is that I was asked to go to like I thought it was a pool party, so my Arabic wasn't that great at the time. I could have swore they said going to a pool party, and this is not like, people don't have pools really, so it's like that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, I'll go, right? And my friend Rami, he's the one that hooked this up for me to go to this party. I know it was a party, whether it be a pool party, what I know it's a party. And they said, you know what, come back to this place where we're at, and when actually no, we're going to pick you up at your apartment and we're going to go to this party. But the Rami, he didn't want to be at the party because they were drinking, and he doesn't want to be around alcohol.
Mm.
So he has me go with people that I really didn't know at all.
Mm.
All right. And this was about, I say, 5 o'clock in the evening. All right. So I'm like, okay, get into a car with two people I don't know. All right. And we go south of Tripoli. So we're leaving out. I just want to make sure I had enough money that I can take a taxi back. But we're leaving the city. We're going south of the city. And I'm like, I don't even know how I can get a taxi from here because you can't call. And so we get to one place, like in a little apartment complex, right? And then I meet this lady. A lady comes down. She's a mother of this daughter who I meet as well. They come down from the apartment. Daughter's dressed up really nice. The mother's dressed up really nice. I'm like, oh, I think I'm underdressed because these people are dressed up nice. So apparently I thought this is where the party was, but it wasn't. So now we all get into 3 cars, and I get into a different car, somebody else's car. All right.
Oh,
and we
man.
drive this caravan back into the city, into Tripoli. So it made me feel a little bit better because now we're going into the city. But we actually go through the city, and then we start heading out of the city again, going north. And at this time, it's getting dark because this is the fall technically. So it's like
y'all just went to
7 o'clock.
pick somebody up.
We just went to pick somebody up. So we go through Tripoli and go straight north. Now, I tell you, we're only 20 miles from the border of Syria. So there's not much to go straight north.
Damn.
And we are going along the Mediterranean, going straight north. All right. And now I'm getting nervous because I'm looking at my GPS on my phone, and we're like 5 miles from Syria, and we're not stopping. And so I remember one of the guys, Wasim, he like had a bottle of whiskey. He was in the back seat, and he's like, Mitch, whiskey? And I'm like, yes. So I took it and I just swigged it. I was just drinking because I don't know what's going on. So instead of going up north to Syria, we get off the road. So thank God we're not going. But now we're going northeast. So we're still going up towards Syria. And I remember texting people. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm scared. So it's dark, pitch dark.
Who are you texting though? You're texting in Arabic?
No, I'm texting people back in the States.
In the States.
Yes, because I'm nervous.
Okay.
And so I remember going, it's dark, and we're going up this road, and now we're probably like maybe 2 miles from the border of Syria. And we make a left turn, and there's nothing around. It's like the country. There's just nothing around. And all the cars stop. All right. And then the gentleman who tried to talk English to me, but he should have just spoke Arabic. He was the driver. He says, he pointed at me and pointed out the window. He says, Mitch, you go Syria. And I'm thinking he wants me to walk to Syria. I don't know what that means. He says, you go Syria. I'm like, oh man. So I'm getting out the car because my first instinct is to get out the car and just run the other way because they're not going to get me up in here. All right. Because I knew this was too good to be true. All this stuff, these nice people, it was all a facade. They're trying to get me. So I start to get out the car. He says, no. He says, you stay. I go. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. All right. I thought we were just going to a party. And so now he leaves the car and another driver comes into my car. So I'm confused and I see this stuff in movies. All right.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think I'm getting kidnapped. And then we start driving again and turns the music up. And I'm like asking, and the guy who got into the car, he speaks English. So I'm like, okay, that's good. Like, what's going on? He turns the music up. We go through this little village and he starts blowing a horn, flashing the lights. The other cars are doing the same thing too. And all these people are coming out of the woodwork, yelling and screaming. I have no idea what's going on. And then we get to a house and we get out the car. And, you know, the women are coming out from the back of the house, the backyard, and they're doing the chant, the Middle Eastern chant that women do. But I watch too many movies, so I think, okay, that means they got an American and they're gonna kill me.
Yeah.
And we go in the backyard, and there's so many people there, and I got invited. I see what's going on now. I got invited to a wedding, and the person that we picked up with her mother, that was the bride.
Okay.
And in their culture is that the driver or the best man basically has to drive the bride to the wedding. And so that's why they did that switch. I was in the car with the best man. He had to drive the bride the rest of the way.
Okay.
And I remember like they were taking pictures and all this stuff. And the mother, you know, calls me over and she says, Mitch, come. She says, you're family now. And so you have to take the pictures with us.
Wow.
And after the whatever and the dancing and this and that, you know, a lot of people leave and there's the select few that go into the house where there's food. And I was one of those select few. And there was just more dancing and singing. And it was just the great people. And the following week, they invited me back to the same house, but it's because the father of the groom passed away that day when they invited me back to the house, like 5 days later. And they wanted me to come back because they said I was family.
Wow. So they invited you to two important dates, right? A wedding and a wake.
Yes. Yep.
Wow. You got included into the family quick.
Yes, I did. And so after my time in Lebanon, I went to Iraq and I went deep into Iraq, and I went there not to study. I went there because I wanted to help more people.
So all of this that you're talking about, this is you just trying to learn more Arabic, trying to be involved with people that speak the language so you can pick it up better, right? But then that war in Syria blows over to Lebanon, and now you're, you know, stuck in those crossroads, right?
Yes.
What am I going to do? Am I going to continue having fun and learning, or am I going to step it up and help these people that are in need? So now you go to Iraq just to visit, or
just to visit. Not even, I wanted to do some humanitarian work, and I hooked up with somebody who was a pastor for a church there. But a couple of days before I get out there, he's said that he can't help me because he's stuck in Chicago. He's not going to be able to make it. So I'm like, I'm on my own. You know,
Iraq.
In Iraq.
What city are you in?
I'm in Erbil. So it's Kurdistan, Iraq. Is the Kurdish part of Iraq, where again, people are amazing. And so I meet a guy who is from there, and he kind of helped me out. You know, it's funny because he picked me up from the airport. I met him online, picked me up from the airport, and the first thing we went to was a bar in Iraq, and then we went to Hardee's. Hardee's. Yeah, we went to a Hardee's.
They have a Hardee's in Iraq.
So I was under the impression that, especially in Erbil, that it was going to be like Lebanon, very, very poor city. In parts of like Erbil and Iraq, they're poor, of course, but it's completely different than Lebanon because Iraq has got like a lot of oil money around there. And so there's a lot of like, I mean, there's malls there that are beautiful. Now there's malls in Lebanon that's beautiful, but in Beirut, but not in Tripoli. But when I was in Erbil in Iraq, like they had a Kentucky Fried Chicken, best Kentucky Fried Chicken I've ever seen. Beautiful building. They had all this stuff going on. And so it was pretty cool. He introduced me to a few people, a couple of people that have been kidnapped. So he introduced me to these people, but he introduced me to somebody who actually worked for an organization out there that ended up taking me deep into Iraq to go to a city that was outside of Mosul. And Mosul was a city that was like almost the capital, de facto capital of ISIS. It was controlled by ISIS. 7 months before I got there, it was under total ISIS control. And when I was there were still like a lot of like groups that were like sleeper cells. You know, I had to call the U.S. Embassy and let them know that I was going deep into Iraq with this person. And it was like a 3-hour drive. And we went to this place called Lalish, which was the Yazidi temple. It's like Yazidi is a religion, and it was basically their Mecca. And we went there, and this was when I met, you know, a Yazidi family that escaped ISIS in Sinjar in a big genocide there. I met them, and I tried to help them out because the mother was suffering. So I gave them money for medication, and I kind of adopted this family that was in a refugee camp about an hour, 2 hours away from the temple. But, you know, talking to them, talking to the people at the temple, learning like what happened to them escaping ISIS. You know, I said, this is my calling. This is what I want to do. I want to help these people because I felt at the time, that's when I said to myself that I feel like I have superpowers. And the superpower is that I'm not as afraid to die if I'm doing something good for people.
Okay, I get it. I could dig that.
Yeah, I don't want to die getting hit by a car in Omaha, Nebraska. But if something happens to me in Iraq or at the border of Syria or wherever I go, if I'm helping people, then I'm happy.
It's glory.
It's glory. Yeah.
Yeah. And question, what cultural differences were you noticing between Lebanon and Iraq? But before that, I would like to know the day-to-day differences that you notice in Lebanon coming from America, right? Because obviously not only the language is different, right? But what things do you see in Lebanon that you're like, I've never seen this anywhere in my, you know, anywhere in the world, you know, anytime living in Bronx, I've never seen that in particular.
I think the thing that I saw that was highlighted even more on my return trip to Lebanon this past December, and the reason why I returned is because of the economic collapse that it had. And I got to love these people, and I really wanted to help them. I actually want to show the world what was going on with the people in Lebanon. And I felt that there's two things. Number one is that, you know, because of the situation they're in, that those conditions breed terrorists. And they also breed people trying to escape Lebanon and they escape across the Mediterranean, and boats capsize and they die. So I felt it was important that I try to stop that as much as possible. But like I said, it was highlighted then. But when I was there, the main thing that I saw was like a lot of kids, younger people working, supporting the family, like, you know, maybe not being in school. And that's one of the reasons why their parents, their families, they don't want that life for them. You know, they want that life that I had in America, you know, and they want to get them outside of the country so they don't have to do that. One of my friends, he ended up going to jail for something that he did not do. And the guy who took me out to eat lunch, and because he went into jail, like his kids had to support the family, had to help support the family. So a kid had to drop out of school to support the family. You know, this is what you see a lot of in these places that you don't see in America. You know, there's another lady who I met this past trip whose husband he died while he was trying to get overseas, get to Europe. And his boat, went down in the Mediterranean.
Damn.
And, that's another one who she had nothing and so poor. And now these kids are there just like selling whatever they can. Or, it's not really like they don't beg for money, because they do a little bit, but not as much as they would in Beirut, because the people around them, they don't have any money either.
Yeah, it's a slower place too.
Yeah, so they're doing what they can to make pennies in a day, equal to pennies in a day. And so that's what I see. I see that, no matter how bad people think this country is, and the United States, or for whatever reasons, is that there's a lot of safety nets that we do have that they don't have in those places. And they have no choice but to try to escape, and take that trip to Europe, across the Mediterranean, or drop out of school, or, I hate saying this, or they're attracted to like groups that will try to manipulate them, like terrorist groups and things like that. And I saw that when I was out there the first time, and then I saw that highlighted. Now it's even bigger.
And how do you go about finding an apartment right over there? And how was the infrastructure for you? How was your perception of it? And what things were hard for you to adjust? Because obviously, coming from the States, you have to readjust, and it's a different place. So how hard was it for you?
I think the infrastructure, that's tough in a sense that, the power outages that they have constantly, that you have to learn that you're not going to have power quite a few times a day. Now it's even worse. Like, you'll not have power for, 12 hours, 8 hours in the day up in northern Lebanon. So that was a huge thing. I think that's the water, of course, but I go to a lot of places where you can't drink the water, but that water is really bad. So, the sewage system is not that great there. I did get sick pretty bad that I thought I was going to die in Lebanon, in Tripoli, where I ate something and I couldn't get to a doctor, a hospital, because I would have had to go to Beirut, and it's not that easy to get down to Beirut. And so, that alone, with like having medicine and having a healthcare, that's terrible. And so these people are suffering. I work with a group now where we raised money to actually get somebody a surgery, because they couldn't get that surgery now. So it's things like that we take for granted here, that they have there. But the food wasn't really that bad. A lot of that food is so fresh. It's a little bit different than, here with like all these preservatives and all that stuff. So that's a good thing. No street lights up in Tripoli. So, and people drive like there's no stop signs. You just drive.
You just drive.
And me walking across the street that was probably the biggest adjustment, because I remember staying on a sidewalk and not wanting to cross the street for about 20 minutes. And I see all these other people walking, all right, going through traffic. It's like cars don't exist. They just walk straight, and the cars, it's crazy. But I'm like, I'm not getting hit. I'm scared.
They probably feel like they have to adjust to me now. They have to stop when they see me. That's how people feel.
Yeah, but they're not doing it. So I just have to play Frogger and try to, or walk somewhere else where it's a little slower. But that's something that people would definitely have to get adjusted to.
Wow. And before we get into the humanitarian stuff, I would like to know the differences in the Arabic between Lebanon and Iraq, because I know in the Middle East, different. I know that they don't all speak Arabic, right? Like in Iran, for example, speak Farsi.
They speak Farsi. And so in Iraq, they speak Arabic. Lebanon speaks Arabic. Morocco speaks Arabic. But there's the different dialects, which is complete. Like when people from Morocco go to like Lebanon, right? And they're speaking Arabic to somebody who's Lebanese, because it's happened. And the Lebanese person was like, okay, now can you speak Arabic? Because they don't even understand like what this is. I will say that Lebanon, they speak Arabic, French, and English. All right, probably in that order. In the poor cities, it's basically Arabic. They don't really speak English. They definitely don't speak French. I think in the poor cities, they speak Arabic, a little bit of English, less French. Beirut, a lot of French, because Lebanon was controlled by the French.
Yeah.
You know, it was a colony of the French. So when because I remember loving this drink in Lebanon. It's a strawberry juice. So it's in Lebanon you call it asir fraise. All right. Now I'm learning Arabic, so I'm thinking fraise is strawberry in Arabic. Now asir is juice in Arabic, and I'm just juice in Arabic in Iraq and in Lebanon. But fraise is actually French for strawberry.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Fresa in Spanish.
Yeah. So, but in Lebanon, they combine a lot of that stuff, a lot of words. And so when I went to Iraq to order this asir fraise, they had no idea what the heck I was talking about. And so I remember them giving me something that was like purple. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I'm drinking it, and it didn't even taste good. But the Arabic is so different no matter where you go in the Middle East. Now, like in Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and I think even like Sudan, their Arabic is, I'd like to say, proper. It's more proper than the dialects in the other Arabic places. But written Arabic is a little bit different, because I'm learning written Arabic, which is called Fusha, which is modern standard Arabic. And it's the Arabic that's literally written Arabic. It's like in the Quran, it's in written publications, you know, when they speak is a little bit different, but that's what I'm learning.
Interesting stuff, man. So what they speak, it's not necessarily what is written.
Right. The Quran is universal, and that is the modern standard Arabic, but it's completely different in almost every country.
Wow, it's amazing. We think that the world's not as diverse, right? And it truly is. It truly is. Yeah, because like take somebody from Scotland, right, and drop them in Chirac. They're not going to understand each other, like, you know, and they may speak English, right, but they're not really getting what they're saying. So imagine in these places.
My daughter. So I lived in Australia, and my daughter's Australian.
Okay.
Australian and American citizen. It's hard for me to understand some of the stuff that her and her mother are saying. When I was out there staying with her mother's family, I couldn't understand anything they're saying, but they're speaking English. I have no idea what type of English that is. So I get it. I understand it.
How long did you live in Australia?
Not that long. I was there, you know, to see her being born, and I stayed out there for a little bit. I actually overstayed. I was banned from Australia for 7 years.
Why?
I remember, now this was after 9/11, right? Okay. And I remember going to the airport and thinking that I wasn't going to be in the States that long. I was going to, you know, come back. So I was leaving Australia, and I was running late. I remember we were running late to the flight. But they pulled me aside, you know, immigration there pulled me aside and put me into this room, right? And in this room were a bunch of people. The stereotypical thing was they were like, most of them were Muslim. And I'm like, do they think that I'm like a terrorist? Because I know how people are in their thinking. Because at the time, people's thinking is warped. They think that people who are wearing just a hijab, you know, must be a terrorist, you know, because, and this is Australia, you know, no different than the United States, you know, in the sense that they're stereotypes. Yeah. And so, but they put me into this room with all these people. And then I remember them letting so one of the people in the room asked me, like, why are you here? I don't know. And they asked, like, are you from Africa? I'm like, no, I'm from the States. Then they're like, well, why are you here? It's like, I don't know. So they let all these people go except for me. And I'm like, uh-oh. Like, this is like this is like how it was back in my freshman year. Now another thing's going to happen to me. But they said that I overstayed my visa. And for I don't know how long. And so because of that, they held that plane for me. People were upset because they were holding that plane for me. They just wanted me out of the country. And they said that you're banned from the country. So I was blacklisted. But I could fix it. If I have to go to the embassy. But like right after that, my daughter and her mother came over to the States. So I didn't really fix it. And they came over to the States often.
Okay. So you were able to see your daughter because she went to you. She can't go back.
Yeah. But that was 7 years. That was back in 2001 to like 2008. So.
Wow. And your daughter and her mother, they live in Sydney or Melbourne?
They live right outside of Melbourne. My daughter is amazing. When she was 15 years old, turning 16, she actually spent her 16th birthday in the jungles in Vietnam because she was, it's like me, she was actually teaching kids English and building homes and bathrooms for people. She backpacked across Vietnam. She was one of 14 students chosen to backpack across Vietnam for a month.
I can't wait to go to Vietnam. That's another place I want to visit. Man, you've been all over. And so I had a hunch, right? Going back to that difference in Arabic, I had a hunch that obviously Lebanon has to be really different, especially in the place that you were, compared to Iraq. Now, this humanitarian thing, this grew on you while being in Lebanon and while seeing refugees from Syria spilling over due to the civil war. This is where it grew.
It grew from there, but it really grew actually when I was in Iraq. Now I was doing the humanitarian work. I was doing stuff, but when I was in Iraq for those 3 weeks is when I met that family. That family, I met them in the temple. And it was great. I got to show you pictures. Like everybody's taking pictures with me. Guy wanted me to take a picture with his baby and stuff like that. And then there was a guy who came up to myself and the person who I was with, who she didn't speak Arabic. And this guy spoke, I guess, Kurdish and Arabic. And he was speaking to me in Arabic. So I was understanding him. And he was talking about his wife, because she had like spinal issues. And she needed medicine. They were in a refugee camp. He was talking about where he was from. He's saying all this in Arabic. So I was like, I want to reach out to him. He liked a photo of mine on Instagram the other day. But I said to myself that the stories that he was just telling me in that brief time of knowing him and what he escaped in Sinjar, I said, I need to help people like that. I need to help him. And it started off with just that family. I gave them, what they needed for medicine. They were so grateful. And then I tried to continue, and I still will continue to help that mother. And it's been years, and she needs surgeries that they just can't do there. And we're trying to get her here to the States to do those surgeries. But, COVID messed things up and put everything on hold. And with the last administration, Trump administration, he wasn't letting anybody go anywhere. But I need to help that family. And then I said to myself, you know what? There's thousands of families like that, millions of people like that. And I feel that, especially if I couldn't help them, I'm going to help everybody I can, so they don't suffer like these people. And I want them to know that there's good people out there outside of that country, because they've seen the worst of humanity. Exactly. And I think it's up to me to show them the best of humanity.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And how do you feel when you help these folks, right? Because that's feeding you to continue.
It's feeding me to continue. But you feel like you want to just take everybody in and help them. And you can't do that. And so even, it feels good to help them, but it also feels like it's a hopeless situation because there's more like them and you need to help them even more and you need to help people. So actually it feeds you, but it you can give up and you can say, you know what, I can't do it. This is how people, especially with voting, people say, oh, my vote doesn't count. I can't do it, but your vote does count. And me helping people, even if it's a little bit, it does count. And so it feeds me to help more and more and more. And I know based on where I want my life to be is it's in service to others. And people ask, like, I work for Habitat for Humanity now in Omaha. So there's a lot of people say, well, why aren't you doing stuff here for people? Why do you do stuff over there? One of the reasons, number one, is that we do have a lot of those safety nets that help people. And we have a lot of organizations that help people. But out there, they don't have that stuff. And people are scared to go out there to help people. So the same people that are doing like nonprofit work here, they wouldn't go out to northern Lebanon or Iraq to do that stuff. I can, but I'm also helping people here. And I'm also helping people that probably don't like me. I don't really care, or have attitudes that's what I said. I was talking to you earlier about helping people. It's like, I don't care who I help. I'm not going to ask them their religion. I'm not going to ask them what their beliefs are. I'm not going to ask them if they're, sympathetic to a terrorist organization or not. It's not up to me to judge. It's not up to me. That's between God and whoever. That's between the legal system of the UN and whoever, but I'm going to help feed that person without asking them, what their beliefs are.
And while being in Iraq, this is where it all starts, right? Emotionally for you.
Yes.
Do you still have your apartment in Lebanon, and do you have a place in the States still?
No, I have a place in the States. I knew that I was coming back. I actually had somebody stay. I kind of rented out my apartment because I wasn't paying. I'm renting. So I wasn't paying, when I'm gone. So I had somebody, like, I paid half and they paid half. And so in Lebanon, I was gone. I was done. I had a backpack, huge backpack, of course, and I'm now in Iraq. But I knew I was going back to Lebanon. I just didn't know exactly when. But again, the pandemic hurt things, Right before the pandemic, I did do a Europe trip. I went to Romania and Spain, but I spent more time in Romania. So it was a Romanian trip. And then after that, I did Cuba for a week. And then the pandemic happened and then it shut things off. But when the pandemic happened, that put Lebanon in a worse shape. And because of there's two things. There's the pandemic and then the explosion at the port in Beirut.
In Beirut, I remember that.
And then the fact that there was like a somewhat of a revolution of the government there, and then there was no working government, and that created this collapse. And then I saw that boat of migrants capsized, killing about 100 people off the coast of Lebanon, leaving the area that I was at. And that's what I said, you know what? I'm going out there, and now I'm all in. I'm all in with this. Like, I'm going to help. And so I hooked up with a gentleman who owned a restaurant when I was there the first time, and he has a nonprofit out there. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna help. I'm gonna help him out. I'm gonna get the word out. I'm gonna show why the world can't turn their back on Lebanon because of the consequences that would happen if they did turn their back on Lebanon. But now I'm all in with humanitarian work.
Wow. When are you going back to Lebanon?
I am going back in December. So I do want to take more people with me so they can experience that, so they can see that. This is what I say, and not just the humanitarian aspect of it, but the people, how beautiful the people are. I say that it sucks because a lot of people won't travel there because maybe they're scared. Nothing to be scared about, especially if you go there knowing people. And now I know a lot of people and I'm very comfortable going there. So I would love a group to come with me out there, but just to see like the people, just to meet the people, you'd be like one of like the most special gifts I've ever got was a guy who was a devout Sunni Muslim, and he gave me a cross as a gift. He gave me a cross. Yeah. And that was so special to me. But this is just how they are. And I want people here to experience that because maybe they can take that home and, and live like that. Maybe they can welcome these refugees coming into America the way they welcome me as I was there.
Yeah, and it shows how, a lot of people tend to criticize Muslims, right, for being extremist. But that's a stereotype. A lot of people, most of them actually, are really welcoming, really tolerant,
Yes.
and we have to see that more.
Muslims are actually the most charitable religion out there. A lot of people don't know that. They give the most to charity.
Look at that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. There you go. There you go. And so you got friends out there that help you. And this friend of yours, what is his nonprofit called?
It's called Here. So it's really hard to like say. It's not hard to say, but it's that Here. It's it's if you're gonna say it in English, it's KHER, Wajba, and it basically means like charity meals.
Charity meals. Okay.
Yeah. So
and how does he get the resources right to help others?
It's tough. It's
just
tough because so number one, he's a licensed NGO in Lebanon. All right, but not like in the United States. So it's hard to raise tons of money for him because people here, it's like, no, they just want like the tax write-off. So they would give money based on the tax write-off, not about helping people. So because he worked in the restaurant industry, he still has those connections to like food, and then he knows very important people like around the Middle East, where he's raising money to get blankets, from other countries, so he can like. I'll tell you something. When I was with him and going to some of these places just this past December, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it brought tears to my eye, and it was hard to see that people are struggling that much, and that they have no choice but to do things that are, we think, as drastic. I saw people fighting over blankets. Like we were handing out blankets and they were fighting over blankets, that we have to actually remove ourselves from the situation and rethink how we're going to give out these blankets. He's doing an amazing job, and it's up to me to try to help educate people here about the work that he's doing there, so we can try to help as much as possible. But I think one of those things is just, getting people to actually travel with him and see the stuff that's going on, because it's so important. We have to open our eyes to this. The world has to open their eyes and their hearts, open up their hearts and help these people that are suffering. And he is basically at the forefront of this.
And is he from Tripoli?
He lives in Tripoli. He's not originally from Tripoli, but he lives there now. And he was actually, CNN did a little profile of him during the last Lebanese revolution that they had, about his soup kitchen, because he had a soup kitchen as well at the time. He does whatever he can to help people because he knows that it's bad. He knows it's a really bad situation. And that's one of the reasons why I want to live there. I think it's very important for me to like be there
Yeah.
and give money. And actually, that's one of the big things that we could do for Lebanon is to inject like money into their economy. And so, not again taking those trips to see the great people, taking those trips to help people and the humanitarian aspect of it, but also going there to give them money, give stores money, uh, things like that, give the taxis money,
Yeah.
have to inject that into the economy because that's the only way that that economy will survive and get out of the situation that they're in now.
Man, how long has Lebanon been in this situation?
Probably since 2019. I think
Okay.
the explosion happened in 2021, I think, or 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
But it was one after the other. 2019 is when the economy started just losing it, right? And then in 2020, you had the pandemic, and then you had the explosion, and you had all this stuff,
Yeah.
and the people are, and now you're getting that blame game sometimes with the people,
Mm.
is because Lebanon never really fully integrated the refugees that were there. And when you hear a lot of Americans say that, you know, we're taking on all these refugees. Why aren't these Middle Eastern countries taking in refugees? Lebanon has, I don't know how many people, maybe 4 million people that are in Lebanon, but 3 million like refugees,
Oh,
something.
wow. I was reading recently that back in 2016, they had 1.5 Syrians alone
Yeah,
in
yeah. Then
Lebanon,
you have the Palestinians.
and then currently they have like 800,000.
Yeah,
That's amazing. That's a lot of people.
it's so, they take on so much, but then that's the problem when you have the economy that collapses like that. Then you have a lot of the Lebanese that are placing blame on the Syrians and on
Mm.
Palestinians and all that stuff, and then so now you're going to have clashes within. Lebanon was so bad in the 70s and 80s. It was like the way Syria is now. All right. Um, they don't want it to go back to that. Lebanon
Yeah.
was it is a beautiful place. And it was, Beirut used to be called the Paris of the Middle East, but they do not want to go back to that. And that's what it looks like they're doing. They're going back to
Mm.
that. So we have to change that.
Yeah, that's tough. What do you like the most out of that area besides the people?
Besides the people, it's the food.
The food?
The Lebanon has the best food out of any country I've been to.
Wow.
Lebanese food, and it's really hard to find. So if you have listeners that know any Lebanese restaurants, whether it be in Puerto Rico or in the States, I will go and check it out because it's really hard to find good Lebanese food that matches what is out there in Lebanon. The only place that I had great Lebanese food was in Budapest.
Okay.
There's a place in Budapest that was extremely, like,
What
it
do you
was
like about their food?
um you know what, it's they use a lot of bread, and bread is a little bit different
Okay.
there than here. We use like a lot of pita bread. They have this really great fresh bread that they make, and it's completely different. They have meats. They have all these dishes, this sfiha. They have these like sausages that are like kind of like spicy sausage. The hummus is out of this world. And there's this one place I don't even like falafel, and I had
Yeah.
falafel in Lebanon, and it was great. But there was this one place, and I forgot what they do with the hummus. But I've never had anything like it in my life, and it was
Mm.
in Tripoli, in the poorest city, and had the best food. They have beautiful desserts, like sweets. They
Yeah.
have this one dish called kanafe, and kanafe is, it's like I don't want to say it's a pastry. It's just different compared to what we're used to, but it's got cheese in it, butter. It's just so good. So I think the food is one of the reasons why I love Lebanon. The food and the
And,
people.
and how hard was it to learn Arabic to a point where you felt comfortable? conversing
It's
with folks
hard.
in the
It's
streets?
hard. It's hard. I actually like noticed when I came back because I didn't practice it because of COVID. I didn't do anything. And when I came back to Lebanon, I was trying to like remember a lot of things that I totally forgot. So you have to continue. I mean, you know how it is. Like, I mean, just like in any language that you take, you have to continue to keep it up. You have to keep on learning every day. It was not as hard as I thought because once you get the basics, things were easier. And again, I did not talk to the people in the classes that I was with. I talked to the local people who didn't speak English. And
Hmm.
so I had to just to survive in a place like that, I had to learn the language. There was a guy named Mustafa I met because I told you I used to walk back all the time from school. And there was a guy who owned a flower shop, right? And I would sit in and talk, and he would help me with Arabic. And there was a gentleman that came in there who was a little different. You know, I don't know if he had the mental issues, but he was a little different. And he sat down and he was like, you know, he was eyeing me down. Now I'm from New York, so he looked rough around the edges, to say that. All
Hmm.
right. And he was speaking to me. So I had to speak. I had to know what he's speaking because I didn't want to say the wrong words. I had to
Hmm.
listen to him. He didn't speak English. So when you're in situations like that, you better be on top of your Arabic game. And it's funny because I was going through my phone showing him a few pictures, and I had a picture of Donald Trump.
Mm.
And he said, go. He wanted to go back to see that picture. He's like, who's that? He said in Arabic. I said, Donald Trump, the president. And he said this in English. He said, F him, F that
Mm.
guy. And I'm like, yeah, F that guy. And so that's how we kind of bonded. And after that, the guy just loved me. He loved me. He'd see me in the street. He like kissed me on the cheek and all that stuff. Had a big smile on his face. Um, he did pull out a knife on a couple of my students, not my students, my classmates.
For no
Um,
reason?
I told you he was a little off. I found out that he did that, and I was like, I definitely don't want to hang out with these guys because this guy likes me. I don't want him to see me with them. So
Mm.
I'm like, I'm not. That's when I really didn't do anything because sometimes we go out in class during class, we go out and have like a bite to eat before the next class. Was not seeing with those guys anymore because Mustafa liked me. So
Yeah.
that is where you have to really like be on top of your game with like the language, because you never know what's going to happen.
Did anyone give you issues receiving help? You know, sometimes you have to look deep into people's souls and you notice how they may be poor in the material world, but they're also poor within. You
Yeah,
see what I'm saying? Sometimes people are not even I'm not gonna say worth helping, but they reject the help for
they
some
reject the
reason.
help
Have you
because they're too
seen that over there?
proud. No, it's a
Mm.
little bit different there because they are so desperate. You know, the desperation goes beyond pride. You know, you
Mm.
get that here a lot in the States
Yeah.
because, you know, they see too much. They see a guy five blocks away with nice cars and this and that, not getting any help, you know. So here it's like a lot of people, they don't want the help, even though they need the help. They feel that
Yeah.
their pride will let that get in the way of them getting help. But out there, because the situation is so desperate,
Mhm.
that they welcome any help they can get. I do have to say that there is a little bit of hesitation at first
Mhm.
because I'm an American,
Okay.
and so they don't know. I'm a big guy, so you know I look military, but I've never been in the military. But they don't know my angle, and once they know that I'm there trying to help, that's when they open up a little bit more.
Mm. And what
So
is their perception of America? Like you said that they dislike the government, but they like the people, obviously, right?
yeah,
Um, it seems like they're aware of geopolitics. They're aware of what America does overseas.
I hate saying this because it's going to get me in trouble in the sense that I always think that New Yorkers are the smartest people in this country, in a sense, of growing up, because they're exposed to so much. They're exposed to different cultures, things like that. And the newspapers are a little bit different compared to newspapers in Omaha, Nebraska. All right. So I say that. Now traveling international is that there's a lot of people that are aware of the world, because they know that they don't have the best country, in a sense. I'm not saying that we're the best country, because I've been to places where that are beautiful and the people are nice. I think comparing countries is going like apples and oranges.
I'm the same way. They're just different.
They're different. So, but we like to say we're the best.
Yeah.
And we like to say that there's nothing outside of our borders other than America. So it's hard to like argue with people here in this country about things internationally, because they think they know stuff, but they really don't know anything. All right.
Exactly.
But when you have people there, like they don't have the news. A lot of people don't have news. They they watch Al Jazeera. All right. I watch Al Jazeera. It talks a lot about international news. People here that come from overseas, like refugees, former refugees. I like to say former refugees because they're not technically refugees when they're in this country. They used to be refugees. They're not refugees anymore. But all the former refugees, they listen to BBC, because they want to know what's going on in their country or in the world. All right. So I think that, the people out there, they know so much about what's going on outside of the country. And they also care about what's going on in the country, but they know a lot about what's going on outside of the country. So I like to say that they have a level of intelligence about the world.
I noticed that in Cuba. When I went to Cuba, they were aware of what was going on in Puerto Rico and aware of what was going on around the world. And I'm like, that's interesting, because, we are told that you guys don't have access to the internet and do not know what's going on. And man, I was so wrong about that when I went over there. I remember when I traveled to Cuba, it was 2016, summer of 2016, and Puerto Rico was going through a drought. Okay. So I went to Cuba and I was in, I want to say, somewhere near Holguín. This is towards the east side of the island. Okay. And they took us to a place where they would take care of the elderly. Okay. Folks that their families have left the island and left them behind. Right. So they take care of the elderly, beautiful people. First thing they tell me, I arrive, I'm going up the stairs. You're from Puerto Rico, right? I'm like, yeah. Has it rained yet? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm 3 weeks and, I don't remember the drought back home, because I knew it was going to rain sooner or later, right? But they're worried about us because we don't got rain. We don't got water, right? And she's like, listen, without water, you can't live. That's the essence. And I'm like, yeah, but we go through this, once a year. But it's not as bad as, like, it is going to rain sooner or later, right? We're in the tropics. And they were so worried about us. And I'm like, wow, these people are like up to date on what's going on back home.
Like Cuba, they have like in Havana, they have like the best college for like community health programs that people from around the world actually go to. Right. But we don't see that here. We think of that being just a poor place and it's a communist place. They don't know anything. But, for like COVID and the pandemic, that's right up their alley, and for trying to help, the communities deal with the pandemic like that.
That's right.
Because I remember, I think they like offered some help or something like that. And I think Trump said no, or they offered help with something. Yeah. But they are so intelligent, and we have to, like, these conversations that we're having, you can have them with so many people outside of this country. like in Europe and the Middle East, you can have these conversations in like little like coffee shops, or smoking the shisha,
The hookahs.
yeah, yeah. The hookah's the thing, and the shisha is like what's in the.
Yeah.
You can have
Yeah.
these conversations. I have these conversations with people, and it's a
Mm.
beautiful thing. And then you learn even more about the thinking.
Where else in the Middle East would you live outside Lebanon?
It's hard to say. One of my trips that I really, really want to go to, and I know I can't live there. I would love to live there and be amongst the people because of the struggle, is Palestine. And
Hmm.
then we can get to a whole story on that. That's another podcast.
Yeah. I have a
But
mentor that lived there for a while,
really, I think I
long
need to
ago,
do
though,
that.
years ago.
Yeah, I would love to have a mentor there. Like that's something that we need to do, and I'd love to like. There's and I'm not doing a plug because I don't own this website. There's a website called Preply, Preply. All right,
Okay.
it's amazing because I've learned Russian because I'm learning Arabic and Russian, and I've learned Russian from a tutor on this Preply. You can learn languages on this, and it's inexpensive. Like you learn Russian. I was learning like $7 an hour for a class, and they
Mm.
give you a textbooks and stuff. You take it a couple of times a week. So what I wanted to do is do the same thing with Palestinian tutors to learn Arabic because they need help. They need money. Injecting that money into the economy of Lebanon is the same thing with Palestine. And so I would love to go there. I would love to live there. I've never been there, but I know that I would love to go there and live there
Yeah.
because of the struggle that the Palestinian people have gone through. I want to be there to see that, to help them, to be part of that struggle.
They're going through hard times right now.
They
Hard
really
times.
are, really, really are. And I'm
Yeah.
going to
A lot
get
of
there.
ethnic cleansings going on. It's tough, man. It's
Yeah,
really tough. I feel for them. I
yeah,
really do. I really do. It's hypocritical that we don't criticize the things that are occurring there, but then we see something else that interests us, right? Because there's natural resources,
yeah,
and that's what
yeah.
we criticize. That we talk.
I
That's what we talk
know
about all the time.
exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
always about natural resources, right? That's
how
the
that's not going to help us. How is helping the Palestinians actually going to help us? But what they don't know, it does help us because
it does
a
help.
lot of
Yeah.
problems in the Middle East and almost in the world like is caused because of the the horrible conditions and the horrible things that have happened to the Palestinians over the last 60 plus years.
Yeah.
That's why things happen. That's why people don't like us. That's the reason. It all stems from what's going on in that part of the world, that part of the
Yeah.
Middle East.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing stuff, man. The world is it gets smaller by the minute due to technology, but at the same time, man, each person is a whole different world.
Hmm.
And meeting somebody in Lebanon and Tripoli, that has never left the country,
Yep.
and see their perception of life, and it's amazing stuff, man. It's amazing stuff. And you learning different languages, it helps you think differently, right?
Yes,
Because
it
our
does.
thoughts are limited to our language,
Yeah.
right? I can't think outside English. I can't think outside Spanish.
Right.
But you, on the other hand, you're learning Russian, you're learning Arabic. And is it true about Russian that it doesn't really matter how the sentence is structured? You could actually receive the message the same way. Is that
You
true?
can. Yeah, I
That's
mean, you
amazing
can. You
stuff.
basically can. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's hard. Arabic was easy for me in a sense that it was so different than Latin languages. You had
Mhm.
different characters, things like that. So it's like learning something new, and it's pretty. The way it's written, it's pretty. So I found interest in learning it. Also because I'm interested in the region. And
Mhm.
so I'm gonna like really like learn Arabic. Russian is harder because there's there's similar letters, that I think the P, there's a P in Russian, but it's actually an R sound. but it looks like a P. And so there's like a lot of confusion in that.
Now you see a P and you hear two different sounds.
Yes, and so that's the problem with Russian. It's not the sounds, the characters that are totally different than English. It's the characters that are similar. And so there's a lot of confusion in that. But it's so fun. It's so fun.
Linguistics. Are you interested in this? Even though you're learning, but that's a whole different world too.
I want to go to these places. And so I always feel that it's important to know like the basic languages before you get there, knowing how to say hello, knowing how to say the greetings or thank you, and Karen, because there was 3 trips that I was supposed to take, but I broke my arm. Well, first, number one, I was actually supposed to go to Burma, and go into the Karen state of Burma. But that didn't happen because of the pandemic. And then I was supposed to go to Ukraine, actually, to deliver an ambulance there. That didn't happen because I ended up breaking my tore tendons in my arm where I had to get surgery. And so I ended up just taking that trip to Lebanon. But I'm going to get out there. I'm going to get out to Eastern Europe and that part of Eastern Europe again. I've been to Eastern Europe. I love it.
What language I was interested in learning was Swahili. I heard it was not that hard to learn and is the #1 language spoken in the continent of Africa.
Yeah, it is.
Right. So
and I got to get there.
I got to get there too, man.
There's I've been invited, so I was one of 6 people chosen to meet with the vice president of South Sudan when she came to America after she spoke to the UN. She came here because Omaha has actually the largest number of South Sudanese outside of South Sudan. Oh, and wow. It's a big South Sudanese population here, and they're going through problems. They're going through some major problems. There's an identity crisis. It's crazy. Like the kids, there's a lot of gang violence, and that's because that they don't know who they are. The kids don't know who they are. Their parents are from South Sudan. Their parents have that culture, right? But the kids grow up and they feel that they're too American to be South Sudanese. And then they feel because of they look different. They're darker skinned, taller. They feel that they're too South Sudanese to be American. So they're creating their own culture, and it's a bad culture with a lot of violence and a lot of death. And so what I'm trying to do is trying to figure out ways that I can help them. I think one of the big things is that we build a school, or we work with a school in South Sudan, either South Sudan or like Ethiopia, close to. We work with a school there, and we send kids from here that are maybe 9th and 10th grade. All right, we send them out there instead of being here. Let them learn their culture. Let them do some humanitarian work out there, work on agriculture stuff, help the people out there. And then when they come back here, they have a different frame of mind. They're not going to get into the bad things, because of what they did out there in South Sudan. And then they learn who they are. That's what I would love to do. And I hopefully over the next 5+ years, that's exactly what my goals is, to fund a school.
Amazing stuff, man. Amazing stuff. And I'm pretty sure people that hear this episode are going to be curious about, how do you sustain yourself, right? How do you, what is your job, right? How do you make money? Because the thing is that you're traveling all over these places and risking a lot, right? But how are you able to sustain yourself through these adventures?
I work. Well, I just recently, over the past 2 years, I started working with Habitat for Humanity Omaha. And because it's such a great organization, and they know that of my travels, they showed, and we work in one of the largest habitats in the country, but they showed the work that I've done in overseas. They show videos of that to our staff, because we're all doing the same thing. We're all trying to help people, help humanity. So they're very supportive of that. And they know I'm taking these trips, these long trips overseas now, I can't go as long as I used to go, but I can go for a month. And again, they're supportive of that. So
okay, that's awesome. That's awesome that you and the company are aligned, right? Same
yeah,
views, same mission, and that helps, obviously.
yeah,
Man, exciting stuff, bro. I know that you were not able to go deep into everything you've been through because it's a long time, right? And a lot of places, but this is just a glimpse and it's amazing. So thank you so much for being on here, man. Can we follow you? Do you have any like social media I don't know if you
yeah.
have
No,
like a
it's
website or anything like that.
yeah. No, I don't have a website now, but what you can do is you can follow me on Instagram. Because I post a lot of stuff on Instagram. I even take it
Okay.
on Facebook, but my Instagram is Mitch
Mitch.
dot Strong.
Okay. That's simple. I'm gonna
Yeah.
find you right now. Can I share some of your pictures out there?
Share. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Do that.
Mitch. Okay. Let's get it. Let's get it. I'm really interested, man, and I'm really interested in what you're about to do because of what you've done already. You know, you already been there, you have already done that. So amazing things to come.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. I found you already. I'm following you. Let's get it, man. I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. This has been fun. It's a good
Yeah.
talk. Even before we started the podcast, it's a
Yes,
great
sir.
talk. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Take care, man.
all right, take care.
Thank you so much.
No
Okay.
problem.